What's up, everybody? This is Dr. Cyber Mace over with Cyber Mace Fitness, and we're going to do fight breakdown. So, we got a huge fight on the horizon in Jake Paul versus Andrew Tate. And there's a lot of misconceptions going on around here. A lot of people talking about things they don't know what they're speaking about. And so, my goal is to kind of enlighten you guys and let you know what you can expect to happen and give you a pretty reasonable breakdown. So, if you want to make some bets, you don't get screwed at the office. Because here's the thing, a lot of people are not that smart, and we're gonna find out a lot of people are gonna be betting heavy on the top G. And you know why they're gonna be betting heavy on the top G? Because they look at his record and say, "Oh, he has 87 kickboxing fights. Oh my god, 87 kickboxing fights." And they're so deluded from reality they don't understand what is going on with the situation. See, as my keen eye is telling me, just from my combat experience, my limited combat experience, kickboxing, MMA, I mean, there is a certain level of grit and toughness that transfers over, but it is not the same as boxing. And what you kind of learn about boxing is a heavily technique driven thing in order for you to be able to compete for the long duration of the fight. So the longer you've been doing boxing, like you look at it, like even in the Floyd versus McGregor fight, if you go back and watch that fight, it wasn't that Mayweather outclassed McGregor. Like the differential is not that great. So like the better boxer, there's no really such thing as the better boxer because you're only using two hands. And so there's such a limited creativity of how you actually express the way of being able to fight that it really comes down to who can pace themselves and who has to stand up and who understands how to be able to throw punches without actually wearing themselves out over time. And see, this is where the danger is for Mr. Tate. See, Jake Paul's been doing boxing and strictly boxing. He's probably done a little MMA, a little bit of grappling, a little bit of kickboxing on the side, but his pure focus has been purely boxing. And he's also 25 years old. So from 22 to 25, he has been doing nothing but pure boxing, fully dedicated with all the resources and time to be able to accomplish that goal. And so his jumps of his skill set is going to be incrementally or exponentially greater as opposed to Tate, who is a 35, 36, probably when the bout comes around, retired kickboxer who fought on the European circuit. And see, here's the thing about the European circuit they don't tell you. It's not very good. Like, you don't find, first of all, there's not too many kickboxers running around the world anyway to begin with. And you're definitely not going to go find them in Europe. Most of those are Britain or any of those places. Most of those type of fighters, kickboxing, well, kickboxing, first of all, it's just not that heavily promoted a sport. And where it is heavily promoted typically is in like the Asian countries, like where Muay Thai and other combat like that, stand-up combat is very utilized. Even in the States, kickboxing is not very prevalent. Now you're going to get better kickboxers in the state because we have better athletes or better crops of people because just the sheer size of us. But you're not going to find very good fighters throughout the European circuit. And then here's the other thing people forget about Tate. Tate has not fought since 2020. Now, if you go back and watch those three fights that he fought in 2020, very subpar competition. One guy made his debut that he fought. So Tate, basically, I think Tate had to fight the guy to essentially save the show. But the guy was not, he shouldn't have been in the ring with them. And the other two guys, it was, once again, not very stiff competition. And he lost one of those fights. But if we go back to when he was actually in the prime of his fighting career or towards the back end of his prime, his last real competitive fight was back in like 2016. So that's damn near, he's 2016, it's 2023, damn near. So we're talking about a 7-year layoff, essentially, besides those three kind of offshoot fights that he didn't really even train for, to be honest. I think he just walked in the ring and took it. It was in Budapest, Romania, which is his home city or his home state or statehood. And I think from what I learned, he was just taking on, yeah, we can actually go back. He was just trying to save a show. So yeah, Budapest, Romania, which weren't really real fights. But if you go back, 2016 was a loss. And then 2015 was the last time he was seriously active. Yeah. And he has a couple MMA fights, but not too much work. I mean, once again, these are back in 2010, so we're talking about nearly a decade ago. So this we're talking about a guy who is really, really like not training. 7 years removed. And if here's the thing that you gotta know about fighting. Fighting takes a lot out of you. You don't get better every fight you go into. Like it's a diminishing sport. So the more you do it, the worse you get with time. And so we're talking about a shop worn 36-year-old kickboxer who was already hittable in the kickboxing. If you look at him, he fights with a very low hand down type of style, which leaves his chin pretty much exposed. And if you know anything about fighting, it's so much more muscle memory than anything. So when the things get tough or when he starts to get pushed in that rough spot, his hands are dropping. And to be honest with you, I see one or two things happening. J. Paul KOs him, which I think is probably the highest probability, or Tate realizes like maybe one or two rounds in, this guy actually knows what the fuck he's doing. Let me protect myself, and we just see J. Paul cruise to a very easy, unanimous decision. Because if we're looking at the cardio game, it's not even close. Like J. Paul's smoking his dude. Like if we're talking about just straight cardio, J. Paul's been good because all Tate's been doing is essentially boozing and driving Bugattis and fucking with OnlyFans bitches, and that's been his entire MMO for fuck I don't know how long. So yeah, he said Tate says he's been training, but here's the truth of the matter: training for a fight and just training for regular maintenance and upkeep are two totally different monsters. And you're not going to train like you need to train for a fight. Like people say, "Oh my god!" Like they look at this video, and they say, "Man, Tate looks good for his size." Like, and here's the thing: Tate does look good. If you look at this, the body frames and the physicality, Tate does look like the better option of the two. But this is the J. Paul coming down from training, and Tate is more of an aesthetics guy if you really know the character. So personally, I it's gonna be a great cash grab for Tate. I'm happy for him because I remember him calling this fight on Twitter maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, and I was laughing at it. So now it's like it's funny because it's coming to fruition. But honestly, you're an idiot. You're a fucking idiot or a super fanboy if you think that Tate is going to beat this guy handily. Like I'm hearing people telling me, "Oh, dude, Tate he has 87 fights, man, and Paul he hasn't fought no real boxer." I'm like, bro, Tate hasn't fought anybody. If you go look through Tate's entire record, I don't think there's a single noticeable guy that you can actually point out the lineup and be like, you know what, that guy he's legitimate. And it's not to say he never fought no legitimate competition. Like he fought people, man. He legitimately got in the ring and fought men. But like I don't know, anybody you guys ever heard? I've never heard Infusion 3 tournament champion title. I've never heard of the ISKA like kickboxing association. A lot of these facilities, they're just kind of like random fucking kickboxing organizations. And that's the funny thing about combat is like so much of it is just fucking bullshit. Like you start to realize all of it's fucking bullshit. Yeah, he's a world champion kickboxer. It's like, what does that even mean? Like world championship? How are you a world championship kickboxer? Like what? Who decides this the world? That's the same thing with boxing too. The UFC, all these fucking belts. It's just fictional, made up shit. At the end of the day, you gotta realize it's just there for the promotional aspect because people are stupid and people like belts. Like, oh, belt. Oh, I'll watch it. It's a belt. So it's like you see these things and you're just like, all right, man. Like a lot of you guys don't know what the fuck you're watching. Then another thing people have to understand is the difference between kickboxing and boxing. Like kickboxing is a totally different range as opposed to boxing. The same thing with Muay Thai to kickboxing. The same thing with MMA and kickboxing, MMA to boxing. They transfer. There's interlayer skill sets that can be overlaid on each other, but they're not the same thing. You have to go train boxing if you want to become a boxer. It's not going to be working out for you if all you do is kickboxing and then you just think I'm going to walk into a boxing ring and beat up a boxer. It's not even to say that a boxer is better than a kickboxer in his combat, because we throw the boxer, he has no chance against a kickboxer, zero chance, unless they're heavyweights, because then he could just hit him with one shot and put him away. But you have to understand, boxing and kickboxing, like the range is so different. You can fight with your hands down more so in kickboxing because you have the ability to use kicks to keep the guy off you and keep him in range, and that can entice somebody. If somebody sees you with your hands down, the guy who's stalking you, he's more likely to throw a shot. You can slip and come back with a counter or a kick. You try to keep your hands down in boxing, you're going to get clipped. It's inevitable. And that's a really bad habit with Tate. So I don't know if a lot of people are watching, but listen, bet the house on Paul and bet the house on a KO for Paul. The only way I see Paul losing this is if he does something stupid and Tate wobbles him or something like that. But honestly, if we look at this on paper, we got a 36-year-old kickboxer who hasn't fought a legitimate fight since 2016. And then we have a young man, 25-year-old, who's been fighting. I think he fought 5-6 times in the last 2.5 years, 3 years. And 3 of those fights were legitimate fucking real fights. Like, say what you want about Woodley and Anderson. You could discount the Ben Askren one. Maybe Ben Askren didn't take that shit serious and he found out the fucking hard way. But the man has been training. He's been putting work in. He's been training with real boxers. He's been running a real camp. He's been getting better, and the skill set's only going to get better. And he's getting comfortable now in the ring. He's understanding what he's doing. He's understanding the job and the operations. And Tate, for all much as I love Tate, man's been driving Bugattis and fucking OnlyFans bitches and drinking, drinking heavy and smoking cigars, enjoying the life of a retired kickboxer. So that's my fight breakdown. I'm rolling with Jake Paul, KO, 4th round. And if not a KO in the 4th round, unanimous decision.